She was just another face in the crowd, a quiet passenger tucked away in the very last row of the plane. Nobody paid much attention to her, not the flight attendants, not the people rushing down the aisles, not even the crew preparing for takeoff. She didn't stand out. No flashy clothes, no loud conversations. Just a woman lost in the sea of travelers, staring out the window as the engines roared to life. But sometimes it's the quiet ones who hold the most unexpected stories. At 30,000 feet, as the plane soared above the clouds, everything seemed normal. People chatted softly. Some watched movies. Others tried to catch a little sleep before the long flight was over. But suddenly, the routine shattered. A sudden jolt rattled the entire cabin. The lights flickered. The hum of the engines shifted into an alarming growl. Passengers looked around, confusion and fear mixing in their eyes. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but serious, announcing a malfunction they hadn't anticipated. That's when the woman in the last row, the one nobody noticed, became the center of everything. Her calm presence stood out amid the growing panic. Who was she really? And why did it feel like she already knew something no one else did? As the plane trembled and the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the story of this nobody suddenly became the story of everyone on board. What happens next? How will this unknown passenger change the fate of everyone trapped in that metal tube miles above the earth? Stay with me, because this is just the beginning. The real story is about to unfold, and trust me, it's nothing like you expect. The woman's name was Mia, though no one on the plane knew it yet. She wasn't traveling for fun or business. This trip was a necessity, a last chance to fix something broken in her life. She'd boarded quietly, carrying a worn leather bag and a heart full of unspoken worries. Sitting in the last row, she watched the other passengers with a kind of distant curiosity, as if she belonged somewhere else entirely. Behind her calm exterior was a story that could have filled volumes of past marked by mistakes, lost chances, and a fierce determination to start over. Mia wasn't the kind of person who demanded attention, but sometimes life pushes the most unlikely people into the spotlight. And today, fate had chosen her for a reason. As the plane struggled with the malfunction, whispers spread through the cabin. People gripped armrests, glanced nervously at the flight attendants, and exchanged worried looks. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Yet, amidst all the fear, Mia remained composed, her eyes scanning the rows of anxious faces like she was searching for something or someone. The pilot's voice came again, more urgent this time. The plane's systems were failing faster than anyone expected. Outside, the sky seemed to darken, clouds swirling as if nature itself was reacting to the crisis on board. Panic threatened to spill over, but Mia's presence somehow steadied the room like a silent anchor in a storm. No one knew what had caused the malfunction. Was it mechanical failure? Something more? And why did Mia's quiet confidence hint at secrets deeper than anyone could guess? As the minutes ticked by and the plane trembled with each passing second, the fragile line between survival and disaster grew thinner, and the story of the woman in the last row became even more urgent. As the plane trembled and the murmurs of fear grew louder, passengers began to reveal more of themselves. In the aisle ahead, a father tried to calm his crying child, his voice shaking despite his efforts. Across the cabin, a young couple held hands tightly, their eyes wide with uncertainty. Everyone was caught in the same terrifying moment, yet each person's story added another layer to the mounting tension. Mia stayed quiet, but her sharp gaze never wavered. Something in her demeanor caught the attention of a flight attendant, who hesitated before approaching her. "Are you okay back here?" she asked softly. Mia nodded, but there was a flicker of something else, maybe determination, maybe worry that she didn't share. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, the pilots wrestled with the failing instruments. The captain's face was grim as he exchanged quick, urgent words with his co-pilot. The systems were malfunctioning in a way they hadn't trained for, and every second felt like a race against disaster. Back in the cabin, the overhead lights flickered again, casting long shadows that stretched across the anxious faces. Suddenly, a passenger a few rows forward stood up, frustration breaking through fear. "We need answers," he shouted, his voice echoing. The cabin fell into uneasy silence, broken only by the sound of the engine struggling. It was clear that this flight was no longer just a routine trip, had become a test of endurance and trust. Mia's eyes moved to the man, then to the windows where the sky outside was turning a deep, ominous gray. She knew something the others didn't, or maybe she hoped she did. Her past wasn't just a secret. It was connected to this moment in a way no one could yet understand. The malfunction was more than just mechanical failure. And as the plane fought against the invisible forces threatening it, so did Mia fight. Her own inner battle. Every person on board had their fears, their regrets, and their reasons to survive. But the deeper truth about the plane's malfunction and about Mia was still waiting to be uncovered. And time was running out. The cabin grew colder as the plane shook harder. The steady hum of the engines, now an unpredictable roar. Passengers clutched their armrests, their breaths shallow and quick. Elsewhere, near the front, a flight attendant tried to calm the growing panic, but her voice trembled, betraying the gravity of the situation. Every second stretched longer, like the silence before a storm breaks. Mia's eyes never left the cockpit doors. She knew this wasn't just a technical glitch. Something deeper, something more dangerous, was unfolding. Her fingers tightened. Around the edge of the seat, as memories she had tried to bury surged up, moments tied to secrets she thought she'd left behind. The malfunction was connected to her in ways no one could guess. And she felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. The passengers' stories collided in this confined space. A woman nearby whispered a prayer under her breath, while an elderly man clutched a faded photograph, his knuckles white with fear. The young couple gripped each other tighter, their hope flickering with every jolt. The man who had stood earlier sank back into his seat, frustration now mingling with dread. Everyone was waiting, but waiting felt worse than acting. Suddenly, the plane lurched violently, throwing some passengers forward despite their seatbelts. The overhead compartments rattled ominously. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, strained and urgent. "Brace for possible emergency procedures." That phrase sent a ripple of panic through the cabin. Mia rose slowly, calm but focused, as if she was about to do something no one expected. Eyes turned toward her, searching for answers, for hope. But the truth she held was tangled in danger and doubt. The plane was falling through the sky, and with it, the fragile line between survival and disaster was breaking fast. Outside the windows, dark clouds swirled with an unnatural energy, and inside, every heart was pounding in unison, waiting for the moment everything would change, when the real fight for their lives would begin. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, the plane jolted again, but this time, something else happened. The emergency oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling with a sudden clatter, startling everyone. But not all of them released properly. A few hung twisted, useless to those who desperately needed them. Panic started to ripple through the cabin. Once more, louder and more chaotic than before. Mia's calm shifted just slightly, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the malfunctioning masks. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. Her mind raced through possibilities. This wasn't just a random failure. Someone had tampered with the systems. The realization hit like a punch. This plane's troubles were no accident. Across the aisle, a man in a business suit suddenly stood, his face pale but determined. "This isn't mechanical failure," he said, voice low but urgent. "Someone on this plane is sabotaging us." Whispers erupted, fear turning into suspicion. And every passenger began to glance nervously at each other, searching for signs of a threat they hadn't seen coming. The captain's voice came again, strained but firm, warning of possible loss of cabin pressure and urging everyone to stay calm. Yet, the truth was clear. This flight was spiraling into something far worse than anyone expected. The plane wasn't just malfunctioning, was under threat. Mia clenched her fists, knowing she couldn't stay silent any longer. Her past, the secret she carried, was tied to this sabotage in a way no one could imagine. The stakes had risen, far beyond a simple technical failure. Survival now meant uncovering the truth, but with every passing second, the danger grew more intense, above the clouds. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos inside as the plane fought against invisible forces threatening to tear it apart. The fight for control and for their lives was only just beginning. The plane lurched violently one last time, the cabin lights flickering as the engines groaned under strain. Mia stood, her voice steady but urgent as she addressed the passengers and crew. "Listen to me," she said, her eyes locking with those of the captain, who had just emerged from the cockpit, his face pale but resolute. "The malfunction wasn't random. Someone tried to sabotage this flight, and I know who." The tension in the cabin was thick enough to taste. All eyes turned toward the man in the business suit who had earlier warned about sabotage. But before anyone could react, Mia stepped forward. "It was him," she said quietly, but with undeniable certainty. "He planted false signals in the system to cause the failure, hoping to crash the plane for reasons none of us understand." Yet, the man's face twisted with anger. But before he could deny it, the captain signaled the flight attendants to restrain him. With quick coordination, they managed to hold him down, buying precious moments as the crew worked to stabilize the failing controls. Mia moved to the cockpit door, her fingers steady on the panel. Inputting override codes, she had secretly memorized codes from her past life. She hoped she'd never have to use again. As the engines slowly regained strength, the plane steadied, gliding back toward safer altitudes. Relief rippled through the cabin, but Mia's eyes never left the storm outside the windows. The danger wasn't over, not yet. Then, a soft beep from the cockpit console drew everyone's attention. Mia's heart skipped. A new alert flashed on the screen, one that hadn't been there before. The sabotage was deeper than they'd thought, and a second hidden threat was still active. The captain exchanged a grim glance with Mia. "This flight isn't over," he said quietly. "Not by a long shot." The plane was safe for now, but the real fight for survival was only just beginning. With the immediate danger behind them, the tension in the cabin slowly eased. The man who had tried to sabotage the plane was securely restrained, his plans unraveled by Mia's quick thinking and knowledge. The captain worked closely with the crew to monitor the systems, ensuring no hidden threats remained active. Passengers, once frozen in fear, began to exchange relieved glances and soft words of gratitude. Mia finally allowed herself to sit back down in the last row, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened settle around her. But she wasn't just a nobody anymore. In this moment, she had become someone who mattered not because of fame or recognition, but because she had stepped up when it counted the most. The quiet passenger in the back had saved the flight. As the plane made its way safely toward an emergency landing, people started sharing stories about the fears they'd faced, the loved ones they hoped to see again, and the strength they discovered inside themselves. The young couple from earlier held hands a little tighter. The father soothed his child with a newfound calm, and even the flight attendants exchanged relieved smiles. Mia thought about her own journey, how her past had led her here. to this strange intersection of fear and courage. She realized that sometimes the darkest moments reveal the brightest parts of ourselves. The plane might have malfunctioned at 30,000 feet, but it was the human spirit that kept it flying. When the wheels finally touched down safely, applause and tears filled the cabin. Mia glanced out the window, feeling a quiet pride. This wasn't just a story about a malfunction or sabotage. It was about resilience, hope, and the unexpected heroism found in the last row. And though the scars of that flight would stay with them all, they were reminders of how even the most ordinary people can rise to the extraordinary when it matters most.